to thank you all for coming and welcome you all to the Students' Union, and of course to welcome the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Colin Riordan, on what is the first Vice-Chancellor's question time that Cardiff University have had. Just as a bit of a background to the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Riordan obtained his PhD from the University of Manchester in 1986, and before that he taught English as a foreign language at Julius Maximilians Universität in Germany. Is that right?
Close.
For 2 years. And after obtaining his PhD, he was a lecturer and then senior lecturer in German at Swansea University. He became a professor of German at Newcastle University in 1998. I'm waiting for you to stop me if I get anything wrong. And then later was appointed Pro-Vice-Chancellor and Provost of the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences. In October 2007, he took up the post of Vice-Chancellor at the University of Essex before coming to Cardiff to do that role in September 2012. On arrival at Cardiff, he divided then 27 schools up into 3 colleges: Arts, Humanities and Social Sciences, Physical Sciences and Engineering, and Biomedical and Life Sciences, and wrote the Way Forward document, a strategic plan for Cardiff University 2012 to 2017, containing lots of different targets and sort of visions for the university, such as being a top 100 in the world by 2017. So I thought by an opening question, I might ask how you think that's going, how the college structure is going at the moment, and how we are, where we are, and are we set to meet targets within the Way Forward?
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for inviting me. Can you hear me all right with this? Yeah? Well, how I think the college structure is going, I think we've made really tremendous progress on that. I mean, I would say that, wouldn't I? But I do think that that's what's happened, because the way that we went about it was to say, let's put the structure in place, first of all, and then we'll see how we make it work. And the reason for that is that I've seen processes in the past where people have spent a year planning, a year implementing, and then launching. So we wouldn't actually be, if we'd done that, we wouldn't be starting until September. So really what I wanted to do was get as much of the structural stuff out of the way as we could, as quickly as possible, and concentrate on actually getting the performance that we want at the university and the success for the university. I think as far as making progress towards the Way Forward targets, which is really the top 100, a really critical bit of that is reputation of the university, and particularly its international reputation, and student experience, clearly, and research performance. And on all those measures, we have been doing at least, yes, a little bit better. I mean, we moved slightly ahead, 7 places up in the world rankings. Now, I'm not making any great claims about that. There's so many factors involved, and it depends what everybody else does. But the signs are pretty good, and it really depends a lot on things like what happens in the funding environment, which, as you know, is very volatile, very difficult. It's different from Wales from what it is in England, and different in England from what it's in Scotland and so on. That's quite critical. So there are factors in some ways that are outside our control, but I think we're doing all the right things, certainly.
Okay. So I guess open it up to the floor. Who wants to take the first question? Yep. If you want to say your name, I know your name, but for everyone else.
Sure. My name is Eric Nordgren. I'm a third-year PhD student in SHARE, in archaeological conservation. Going with the college theme, there are lots of potential advantages, which I know you've mentioned in the past. A potential disadvantage might be seen to be the fact that the schools already kind of operated quite independently from each other, and in my experience there hasn't been a great deal of kind of interdisciplinary cooperation across schools. There is some. It would seem that the college structure might possibly increase that situation a bit unless something's done to sort of foster interdisciplinary work, both in research and teaching. And I was wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I would hope that it would have, obviously there's going to be different views on this, I would hope that the college structure would have the opposite effect, because under the college structure, the heads of the schools of each college meet on a weekly basis normally, and they discuss joint projects, they discuss their kind of strategy and their approach and their academic approach on a regular basis. And we ask the colleges to plan as a college and for schools to share their strategic plans on the academic side, as well as staffing and investment and so on. So that ought to encourage joint work within colleges. And I see about every 3 months, I see the head of each college, and with the Deputy Vice Chancellor and the Director of Finance and Director of Planning, and we sort of question them as to how everything's going, and we actually drill down and look at what's happening at that level. Also meet, because we have a weekly kind of management meeting, I meet all the heads of the colleges every week as well. So if there are issues of things not happening between colleges, we can resolve them on a regular basis. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It sounds like that's a great system to have. Is there any, though, more proactive program to foster interdisciplinary work and research, particularly in the idea of going after research grants, which foster that? I know in the United States and many other places this is quite a hot thing at the moment. I don't know if it is in Wales or the UK in general to the same extent, but it does seem like there may be opportunities out there to bring in research and funding and new kinds of teaching as well. But it would seem it might be the kind of thing that could benefit from an actual sort of proactive plan. Is that something that's been considered? Or?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we are actually addressing that with University Research Institutes. So we put a call out for, we've got 4 at the moment, and we put a call out for more expressions of interest or bids to become a University Research Institute. And the idea there is that a research institute will address one of the grand challenges, so a cross-cutting problem that needs to be attacked from lots of different routes, so that you have a multidisciplinary approach. So that will definitely help. I think the innovation system will help as well, because that's designed to again to allow problems to be addressed rather than disciplines in a sense. So I think that those types of initiatives will definitely help. And we're working also with our GW4 partners, that's Bath, Bristol and Exeter, and also with other partners in Wales on similar kinds of initiatives, because you're completely right, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary approaches are the most effective, where you're not thinking about what am I solving in my little area, but what is the problem that we can tackle together.
Good to carry them.
I suppose for people who perhaps don't or are less aware, can you explain the development at Maindee Road and what's going on there, and kind of the plans you have for it and the things you're hoping to achieve?
Yes, well, we're actually today, just today, talking about the development of the university master plan, right? And that is, rather than looking at individual buildings and projects. I mean, we've had some great projects in this building, as you all know, and we've got more coming through during the course of the year for next year. But rather than looking at individual buildings or projects like this, we're looking at the whole campus, not just here, but also at the Heath, and how we can best invest to develop the whole thing. Now, the Maindee Road site is part of that, and one key thing we want to do there is to have an innovation hub and translational research facilities. So translational research is research that is actually going to, is kind of, I wouldn't say close to market, but it's about taking research ideas and getting them out into the world so that they can, so you work with industrial partners. It's a late stage research, not just the basic science, but the late stage as well. So that's the main idea for the Maindee site, that it will be mainly science and technology, and it will be about innovation. And during the course of the next, well, I suppose 9 months or so, by the end of this year, we should have a much clearer idea, because we'll then have the university master plan ready. But the ideas we got are for an innovation hub, which will allow graduate enterprise. There'll be a bridge that's going to be built anyway over the railway line to the business school on the other side. because we really want this to be something that's there for students as well. So we want innovation to be something that's an enterprise, something that students know about, that is kind of part of their academic life, and to promote entrepreneurship and all sorts of things like that.
Excuse me, my name is Naris. I am in the share department with Eric. I'm an MSc student, and I'm currently an international student. For those that don't know, my fees right now are £16,000 per year, which is very, very high. And I had, for a long time, wanted to come to Cardiff University, but I am being affected greatly by the strikes, the UCU strikes. And so I'd like to ask you directly, why aren't the Vice-Chancellors going to the negotiations table to speak with the staff? Don't you recognise that the university is made from the lecturers, from the porters, the administrative staff, basically the very nice infrastructure that you have, building infrastructure is going up all around us, but at the end of the day, the university is made by the staff, and why haven't you even gone to the negotiations table?
No, I mean, I agree with you that that I can understand your point of view that, you know, you've paid a high fee and you've been affected by the strikes. It isn't true to say that we haven't been at the negotiation table. There were consistent negotiations through the process that exists for doing that. And in the end, the employers collectively, now don't forget we're in a national pay bargaining system here, so this isn't Cardiff University, as it were, negotiating with the local union, as it were, or the local campus unions directly. This is via a national pay bargaining system with over 130 universities involved in that. So you have to get agreement as to how that's all going to happen, and there is a very well set out process for that. And the negotiations did continue, but they reached a point where we clearly weren't going to get any further. They just reached an impasse. So what the employers decided to do was to pay the 1% that we said we would pay anyway in December. And what we really need to do now is to make sure that we start the negotiations early enough in this year so that we can get something for next year. Now, the other thing is that the total pay increase across the system is about 3%, because of course it's not just the cost of living increase that's been negotiated, it's also there's something called the incremental progression, when if you're appointed as a lecturer on a particular point of the scale, you will automatically progress every year with a pay increase on top of the one that you would have had. And then there are other merit awards, so people get promotions and that kind of thing. So in Cardiff, certainly last year, that was about 1.3%, as well as the cost of living award. So I don't agree that this is somehow neglectful of staff. I do think that there will eventually come a point where we're going to have to look more closely at the whole remuneration system, the way it's done, because it isn't working very well at the moment. And you know, the difficulty is that if you have a national pay bargaining system, which the unions prefer, as I understand it, and we prefer because it's a kind of more efficient way of doing it, and it gets the best result for the most number of people. If you have that, you're not going to be able to have differentials across the piece. So the cost of living is higher in London than it is in Cardiff, but the increase is the same. So that's a disadvantage of the national pay bargaining system, but an advantage of it is that there is a way of getting the best result across the piece for the greatest number of people.
Sorry, can I?
Yeah,
go
I don't mind.
Sorry, but I don't think your reply responded to the other staff besides the lecturers. I mean, this university is made up of countless of other people who support learning. And whilst you might have a system for lecturers, I certainly haven't heard of one, or one that has any real impact for, say, the maids or the admin staff. Second to that, there's also issue of a differential in pay for male versus female staff, but I don't know very much about that, and I'm shocked if that is the case, if Cardiff University has that, if that is the case for Cardiff University, I might say. But you're saying that there's now I have heard that there is that 1% that you offered, but that you refused to come back after that 1%, and I haven't heard about a 3%, or if that 3% is for a small minority of the staff and not for the majority, especially when you have other people who have been offered 8%, I believe, and I'm reading this from the website, 8% raises, and that people have not, I think, I might be wrong, but it was 13 years, or is it 13, or there's a 13% raise, standard of cost of living increase, of which the university has not responded to. Whilst I do understand that you are part of the bargaining system and you have to go all in with that, I can also say to you that you are as you say, you're part of the Russell Group. You've gone up 7 points. Use your influence, because at the end of the day, without the staff, it doesn't matter what kind of infrastructure you have in terms of buildings, in terms of research programs. Your reputation is going to go down the toilet, and it's not just nationally; it is internationally as well. So I'm sure that you would not have an acceptable answer for me right now, but I would say to you that the national and international students, I am very, very upset by the fact that this is impacting on me so greatly. But on the other hand, I have to support the tutors who have given me so much, and my tutors have given me so much.
I don't mean to cut you off, but is there a question coming out? Some of the Vice Chancellor can respond to at some point.
Thank you for giving me the platform, but I don't give you a question. I give you a challenge to go back and fight for your tutors.
Well, I completely agree that it's not all about buildings at all, and that it is absolutely about staff. I think that universities are good employers, that we at Cardiff and in other universities as well have done everything we possibly can to preserve jobs. You know, at a time when other areas of the economy, there have been huge cutbacks. In Ireland, staff took pay cuts of 20%, professors took pay cuts of 20%, and staff through the system took major pay cuts. We didn't have that happening here. We haven't had pay cuts. We haven't had in Cardiff, big job losses. We still employ around 6,000 staff on good terms and conditions. People do want to work here, and I think we are doing as good a job as we reasonably can in the circumstances, given that we've got to secure our future and that we have, within the system, we have to make sure that we do invest for the future. If we don't do that, I completely agree, we shouldn't be diverting money away from where it could be going to improve people's individual position into just shiny buildings and equipment. But then I do take it really seriously. I mean, I hope you don't think that I just think, the staff don't matter, we're just going to, as it were, treat them as badly as possible. And there are some universities that are in a very, very difficult financial situation, and they cannot agree to high pay rises at the moment. But I think at some point in the future, we will need to make sure that pay is competitive. I mean, pay does need to be competitive at universities. It does, and that will have an effect, I'm sure, at some point.
I'm sure I read in Diary this morning that you've just been made, is it Stonewall Cumley's #1 employer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's good news too.
Reese and then
I'm Reese Jenkins, I'm a third-year law student undergraduate. You mentioned earlier that you want to raise the profile of Cardiff University internationally. What are you doing to do that? How are you going about it?
Okay, so what we're doing is we've got one part of our strategy is to form a kind of international strategic alliance with at least 2 international universities. It doesn't sound very much, right? But there's a very good reason why only 2. And one is that it takes up quite a lot of time to have strategic alliances that really work. So if you say we're going to do 5 or 6 or 7 or 10, you can find that the effort's dissipated. And also the complexity rises every time you add you add another partner. So the possible permutations of 3 are 1 times 2 times 3, which is 6 permutations. Add one more, it's times 4, which is 4 times 6, which is 24. So it gets complicated and expensive very quickly. So that's part of it, and that will allow us to exchange students, exchange staff, do joint research projects, all that kind of thing. And we're actively in contact now with potential partners for that. So that will help to increase our international profile. It's encouraging staff to work internationally. I mean, they do it anyway, but via things like GW4, we can provide seed corn funding for research projects that are international. And in many ways, through my own work, where I've been for the last few years the international champion for UK universities, that gives us the chance, Cardiff University, because I'm the Vice-Chancellor, to profile ourselves at all sorts of international events, which I've also been doing. We're in the process of appointing a Pro-Vice-Chancellor for International who will be able to devote their full attention to this area as well. And we want to increase the proportion of international students, which will also in turn increase our international profile. So we've got a whole set of activities, and of course there's the outward mobility. We've said 17% of our students to go abroad for at least a month, either volunteering or working or studying by 2017. Now I hope that target will become much more demanding, that we'll get a much bigger proportion doing that. And that again, if our students are out in the world, it's really good for the students, because the evidence shows that they do better in their degrees, and they're more employable, they're more likely to get a job. And it's just a fantastic experience. I did it myself. I studied abroad, I've worked abroad, and it's just transformational. So I think the more students we can get doing that, the better it will be, and the more we'll be visible in the outside world.
Do you think it's beneficial to have those links, as you were talking at the beginning, with the universities at the institution level, as opposed to school level? Because, for example, the university that you will be having the agreement with may be excellent researchers in one particular area, and we aren't particularly strong in that area. So although that could work, at the same time, for a school that is particularly good here, do we want to be working with a school, maybe not at that university, that's actually at a greater level of research? And will that work more than just university?
Well, doing it at institutional level doesn't preclude any school contacts, and in fact there's lots of those. I was in China before Christmas and picked up lots of contacts, which were then followed up by the College of Arts, Humanities and Social Sciences. They then went on a trip and followed up a lot of those links with heads of school there as well, and similar things have been happening in other colleges with other schools. So it won't preclude school contacts. And the way we've got about looking for potential partners is by looking for the universities where we already have lots of contact at school level. So we've basically gone for those. We started with those where there's the biggest number of contacts already existing between academics, which means that there'll be the biggest chance that those cooperations can happen.
Thank you.
Emma?
Hi, I'm Emma Carragher. I'm the Women's Officer in the Union. I've got a couple of stats in front of me, which is why I'm being fairly rude about it. So female employees in the university are around 55%. So that's in the lowest 4 pay grades, they make up 71% of staff, but in professional and senior staff, they're less than 17%. I don't have the figure in front of me, but one thing that's come out from the pay disparities is the pay disparity between male and female staff. So how are you as Vice-Chancellor planning to deal with this massive gender inequality?
Yeah, I think it's a real issue. It's a real issue, and it's a very recalcitrant one. It's one that's difficult to move. I've been on the board of something called the Equality Challenge Unit pretty much since I've been a Vice-Chancellor, which is a unit that's funded by the funders, the higher education funding councils, to bring about greater equality, not just in gender, but in other areas as well. And it really isn't as easy as it looks. But what we can do is we've looked at the way promotions work, the way promotions criteria are structured and the way the actual decisions are made in terms of promotions. So that's one area we have already looked at and are continuing to look at, and I can tell you that is already having an impact. It'll take a while before it feeds through to the stats. And similarly in the way in which we make appointments, and particularly to senior management positions. You know, I'm keen that we get more diversity in senior management positions in the university, because that will then drive decision making so far as equality is concerned in the area of gender and other areas as well. I mean, it's a really deep-rooted problem, not just within a specific university, because there aren't many universities that have any better a record. It's something that's kind of institutionalised within the system. There are very few female vice chancellors, for example. The proportion has gone down slightly over the past probably 2 or 3 years. It rose for a bit and then it's gone down, but it's still very low. And that's, I think, that's the biggest thing that can happen. I see this more on a system-wide basis. You know, as well as the university, we'll do whatever we can within the university. One of the key things is to get more women in leadership positions. I think that's really important, because that will drive a lot of change. So hence looking at promotion and appointments and how we go about all that kind of thing. But system-wide, I think we need governing bodies to look at how they make appointments. We need recruitment consultants, headhunters, to look at their role in supporting universities in making senior appointments, and by that I mean vice chancellors. I think that is the thing that in the system is going to make the biggest difference. And there's also things like making it as easy as possible for people to take career breaks and that not affecting their career. So there's a number of things that we can do, and Elizabeth Treasure, who's the Deputy Vice Chancellor, has got that as one of her responsibilities, and I'm sure she'd be happy to talk to you more about the detail of what we're doing in those areas.
In terms of university, have you set any targets for the future?
Yes. Have we set targets? I'm not sure whether we've set performance targets. One thing that had occurred to me was to actually look at the potential for things like bonus and reward for managers who achieve more in those areas. So we're looking at all kinds of possibilities for doing that. One thing we haven't done is set quotas. Because I think you've got to be very, I think, sensitive to the needs of the academy and to the requirement for, you know, not in a sense interfering in academic decision making, which doesn't absolve us from the responsibility of making sure that we do something about this and that we do move it on. I mean, there's a whole series of measures I think we can still take to do something about this, but the most important one is to get women in leadership positions and just have a more diverse leadership, not just at university level, but through the system. So that's the key thing that I want to work on.
Hi, I'm Cardiff, I'm the World Students Officer in the Union. As Vice Chancellor of Wales's biggest university, the only representative of a Welsh institution on the board of Universities UK, what are you able to do and what are you doing to push a Welsh agenda in the wider AT sector, and what are you doing to represent the interests of Welsh students, Welsh staff, in what is a separate financial environment in Wales?
Well, as far as England is concerned, you know, the whole education part is devolved to Wales, and I don't think the Welsh Government would be very happy at me going and trying to sort of do that at a UK national level, and quite rightly, because that has been devolved to Wales. So the engagement on the education side is very, very much with Welsh Government rather than UK Government. But you know, we have a strong interest in UK Government, clearly, because research is organised on a UK-wide basis. So research councils and the Research Excellence Framework, all that, the science funding, that is all on a UK-wide basis. So that's where we really have to ensure that I represent Welsh interests rather than as far as students are concerned. But I think one thing that, the thing that I need to do as best I can as Chair of Higher Education Wales, and obviously as Vice-Chancellor of Cardiff Universities, is to make sure that Wales and Cardiff University in particular, but Welsh universities generally, are not disadvantaged compared with English or Scottish ones within the UK. Now, obviously, we compete not just with English universities or Scottish universities, but internationally. But we really want to see a level playing field as far as that's concerned, and that's where I, do what I can to persuade our funders in Wales that we need to do everything possible to make sure that we're at least as well funded as our fellow universities in England or beyond there, and so that's where I have to put my efforts.
Just talk about that before. You had your hand up earlier. Yeah.
I'm Garrett Shipside's second year engineering student. Undergraduate drinking levels have been what you might call interesting. I've seen figures that say it's rising, it's rising. I've seen figures that say no, it's falling away. I think the reality is quite simple. We get more students who drink more, and we get more students who drink less. And so I think the crucial thing of that is the number of students at this university who don't drink is increasing. And I think that isn't just foreign students, because I'm not a foreign student. I don't particularly know that many who are, certainly from Muslim backgrounds, who for obvious reasons don't drink at all. But what's more interesting is the fact the number of English students aren't drinking. And so my question is quite simple. When, in the summer, first-year students are presented with a freshers calendar, which is their first experience of their social life at Cardiff, that includes nothing but club nights, how do you expect them to feel?
Well, I think it might put some of them off, and I think we should be absolutely working with the Students' Union to make sure that the Freshers' Week and the Freshers' events appeal to a broad section of the incoming population. We should know what it is that they might be interested in, and it annoys me as well, right, frankly, or at least it slightly irritates me that we always make the assumption that that students are really just about partying. And Cardiff has got a particular reputation in that respect, but that's only because it's a big city, I think, and somehow it's within easy reach of London for Daily Mail reporters. I don't know what it is. But we used to get this in Newcastle as well, and of course in Manchester, from time to time they get these reputations. But it's absolutely true that there is that students are much more, as a population, much more multifaceted than they're often given credit for. It's very easy to concentrate on a particular. So, I think that's a question we could pass easily to Students' Union as well as to the university, and I'd be very, very happy to cooperate with a much broader range of things. And as you say, it's not just Muslim students who don't drink. There are lots of students who don't drink, and why not? There are lots of students who have lots of different interests which cannot be categorised and can't be put in boxes.
So will you give assurances that on the Freshers' calendar next year, there will be at least one non-club event open to undergraduates and not just open to postgraduates?
I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
It may be that there's a place for a bit of integration with the widening access department that you have and the schools individually. I'm not sure how that works, but it doesn't seem joined up, even if it is.
Yeah, and this applies not just to that, but to lots of different issues in Cardiff University. We have had an approach which has been very much the schools. There were 27 schools, I think there's now 25, or almost going to be 25 quite soon. And those 25 are in 3 colleges, and we just we will be able to coordinate things much more easily now than we have done in the past. It's going to take a little bit of time to get used to that way of doing things. So we've been doing it now for about 18 months, and I think it's already had an effect in certain ways. But you're right, it is a question of consistency and coordination, so that something that we're doing that's working well happens in a consistent way throughout the university. And we're not really used to thinking of the university as a whole organisation. Things tend to have been done at a school level, and if it works, if a school is doing a really great job, that's wonderful. But if another school, is concentrating on something else, then you might find that a particular area gets neglected in a particular school, and that's what we need to overcome.
Bridget Taylor, third year English Lit and philosophy student. I'd be interested to know what your opinion is on the planned privatisation of the student loans company. which is likely to increase the burden of debt on graduates, especially now that fees are already £9,000 a year, by lifting the cap on interest rates, for example?
Yeah, well, that's obviously something that affects England at the moment and not Wales. So it's not something that is, directly our issue. But as I understand it, what they've decided to do is to sell the students' loan company in order to fund many more student places in England. And it's really a question of what you think is more important, whether it's more important to have more student places, because this will increase. I mean, it means there's no cap on student places, so the universities in England will be able to recruit as many students as they can get from within the UK and the European Union. So that's a quid pro quo for it, and you just have to make a decision about that. And what the government has said, and obviously it's not my decision, it's the government's decision, but what they've said is that it will not affect the terms and conditions for students, certainly those who've taken out loans already, and that's what it will be. So whether that's the case or not, we'll just have to wait and see, but that's the assurance that they've given, and I guess that's what Parliament will need to keep a very close eye on. I mean, they could vary the interest rate, things like that, without selling the student loan company.
Hi, I'm Lisa Childs. I'm a final year politics student. My question's a bit of a double whammy because I'm not linked in any way. As a third year who's looking to continue my study at postgraduate level, I've been looking into different funding and stuff and grants that the university provides. My school, well, not a school, the Department of Politics used to offer a £1,000 grant to somebody who stayed in Cardiff to continue their education, but that's now been cut. And I was looking at other departments that offer these sort of grants, and it seems to be that they're concentrated in the sciencey subjects. And I'm just wondering why that is. And my second question is, I also work for Chwarae Teg, who are a local body who lobby on gender issues. And I was just wondering, you were talking earlier about investment in research and sort of science buildings. Are you planning to implement any sort of gender equality policies to encourage young women to get into STEM subjects?
Well, I talked before about gender equality, and one thing we are doing, which other universities are as well, is taking part in the Athena Swan project, which is exactly on those lines, and we also do take part in schools initiatives to encourage young women into science. So, and I think that's really, yeah, absolutely, it's important. And on the other issue, I don't know the details of that, but we're putting a lot of thought and effort and investment now also into how we do postgraduate funding, not just master's level, but also postgraduate research. So we're looking at scholarships, university-wide scholarships in those areas. Now, I don't know, because I don't know the details of exactly what's happening in your area, I don't know whether that's something that would affect you, but it is one of the biggest problems we face actually at the moment is that the government just sort of did something about undergraduate funding, which is very highly contested, but nevertheless did something about it. But postgraduate funding has almost completely disappeared for home students. You know, I mean, and that's something that we've really got to get an answer on. And what I've been urging the Welsh government to look at, and it is in the remit of this review that I talked about, is postgraduate funding, because if you can get undergraduate funding but can't progress unless your parents can pay, that's very manifestly unfair. You know, I mean, there will be people. So everybody, irrespective of your parental income, everybody can get a student loan, and everybody in Wales will get, £6,000 of that paid by the government, even if their parents are extremely well off. But only those whose parents are sufficiently well off will be able to do postgraduate, because there's just or very little funding for it. There is some, and that's very highly competitive. So I think that's something that has to be addressed. I mean, there isn't an instant solution, but we've got to. So this review that the Welsh Government has initiated will take in the whole life cycle. So widening access, so in other words, where do students come from, right the way through the undergraduate and right through to postgraduate, which I think is the right thing. And if we could get a solution to that in Wales, that we could find that Wales is then leading the field in the UK, because there isn't one anywhere else. at the moment.
So would those stats look across all subject areas
Yeah.
or specific ones?
Well, I think they should look across all subject areas. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just picking up on what you just said about everyone can get a student loan.
Yeah.
One thing that's come up very recently in my in my job is Channel Islanders and their student loan system being very different to student finance England and student finance Wales. And there are students we know currently at Cardiff University who have applied to student finance, got student finance, and then received a letter to say, sorry, your loan was given to you in error. And the university has helped them out in that. But do you think that you, as the representative of the university, has a responsibility to engage in that sort of loophole in the politics, if you like, of student financing? Because obviously there's no immediate solution to people on the Channel Islands wanting to study in the UK mainland.
Yes, there's always been an anomaly with the Channel Islands, and we have to set different fees, and we have a separate process for all of that. But that's certainly something. I don't think that's something we do at Cardiff University. We definitely do that through Universities UK, and I'm quite happy to pick that up. I'm on the board of Universities UK. I'm quite happy to pick that up and take that back and find out what it is we're doing about it. I mean, I'm sure that we will be looking at that, because that's where we do because these things require quite a lot of resource, and they apply across the piece. So there's lots of areas of policy that we deal with at Universities UK level. Some things higher education Wales level that we wouldn't as a single university. You can have much more effect as well if you're talking on behalf of the whole sector. So that's a good point. I wasn't actually aware of that, so I'll pick that up and take it back to UK. It hadn't come to my attention.
Okay. Adam, then Richard.
Hi, I'm Alan Juice. I'm a third year NCAP student. And I was just wondering your thoughts regarding the fee structure that's currently in place and the proportion of spending that's distributed. Because obviously I'm fortunate that I was in the final year of 3,000 tuition fee year, but I would have to question whether the course of English language was worth £9,000 a year compared to the resources that NCAP get as a school compared to other schools such as business, and the sort of lack of research within English language, which obviously Cardiff as a whole prides itself on being a Russell Group member.
Sorry, what's your question?
So would you say be in favour, hypothetically, of discriminatory fees between subjects?
Well, we decided, every university decided that we weren't going to do that, essentially, and the reason is that the real costs of subjects vary enormously, and something like medicine is just much more expensive than something like English, and there isn't the flexibility in the system. We weren't given that flexibility to vary that to reflect the real sort of costs for doing that, for varying the fees between subjects, because if we did, we'd find that it became that we really wouldn't have enough income to the university to keep the university going. So that's the issue that we face with it. We don't have a lot of flexibility, and the other thing is, of course, that the 9,000 fee is not going to change in the immediate future, and it'll be interesting to see what the new government does in 2015. It's extremely, I don't know, who knows, maybe it'll be another coalition between Conservative and Lib Dems, but that looks pretty unlikely. It looks as if there'll be a change of some sort. So I think we're bound to see some sort of change to the student finance system at that point, and I think we just have to wait and see what happens then.
Hi, I'm Rachel and I'm the Students with Disabilities Officer at the Union. I've been receiving feedback that the recommendations being made for students with disabilities aren't always being put in place or being met. I was just wondering how you foresee the schools, student support and Union working together to ensure that these students are fully supported during their time at Cardiff.
Well, what I'd like is to get the detail of that, and I'd like to look into it and make sure it happens, because if recommendations are being made, they need to be put into place, and this and again, it's not a question of individual schools having to decide about that.
Yeah.
You know, it will be the case that if recommendations are made and it's within the ambit of what we should be doing to support students, then we do it. So if you could, via somebody, get those to come forward.
Yeah. Sorry. Tom Eden. Editor of Diary. So my understanding that back in 2010 you were in favour of £9,000 fees, and you said there might be unlikely to be a change come the next government. What do you think there should be a change going forwards, and if so, what should it be?
Well, if you just extrapolate forward inflation, the increased costs. So every time, just the wage inflation. So going back to salaries, we spend about 220 million a year on salaries. If that increases next year by 2.5% to 3%, as it is likely to do, you can see there's going to be a continuous increase in the costs, and at some point we'll find that the income that we're getting to the university won't be enough if the levels of income don't change. So either the government will need to allow more flexibility in fees, or they'll need to go back to subsidising us via the funding councils. Because what we used to get was an enormous grant, really, of many tens of millions of pounds, and there were no fees. And then fees came in at £1,000, and then £3,000, and then somewhere between £6,000 and £9,000, and the grant element went down. That total package has to be at a certain level. Has to at some point would have to increase. Otherwise, you can see what's going to happen if the costs keep rising and the income doesn't.
So which do you prefer, students to pay or the government to pay more?
I think you've got to find the right balance, and what's happened in the recent past is the balance has shifted from it being roughly 60-40 in favour of government to individual to 40-60 the other way round. At least that's the way we're heading overall as a system, and that's really a question for governments on a democratic basis to sort out. That's why you have elections. That's why you elect governments to reach those kinds of decisions, because it needs to be something that is part of a social consensus. It's not obvious that there's a social consensus around this, so it may well be. That's probably the reason why the Labour Party policy is still that the fees capped at 6,000, and presumably they'd have to find the money to fund the rest of it from somewhere else. I'm not quite sure where that would be. As universities, what we need to do is to make sure that we get a sufficient level of income to be able to provide the high quality education. Now, that's really the key thing, and it's a question of getting a democratic consensus around where the balance should lie with the individual or with the state. I mean, don't forget that all the people on low salaries who work in this university are still paying taxes, and their taxes would need to go towards more funding from the government if that was the case, rather than more funding from the individual. So there's always swings and roundabouts with this.
Hi, my name is Colin, and I'm Vice President of Welfare Students Union. I wanted to ask you a question around access to student support. So the Student Support Centre, which is at 50 Park Place, and one at Cardiff House at the Heath campus, are only open from 9 till 5, even though a lot of students who are on 9 to 5 kind of work days when they're at uni, they can't then access student support, and there's no support available to students at evenings or weekends. Although I'm really pleased to hear that extending that is in the long-term planning of the university, do you have any ideas of how we could improve it in the short term?
Well, I know there was. It depends exactly what type of student support you're talking about, but I think the student support we provide here, which I've been over there a couple of times since I arrived, is really pretty good, and that there's out-of-hours support in terms of online and various other things. I think the thing to look at here would be, as we develop the project, the Centre for Student Life, so bringing all the student support together into one place in a almost certainly in a new, well, I think it will be in a new building, which is a project I am very, very keen that we push forward, that we look at it in the context of that, because what that's not just about saying let's take what we do now and put it in a new building. That's about saying if we're going to invest tens of millions of pounds in a new building to augment the student union, and I'm sure there'll be space for the student union within it as well as university services, then we should look at how we deliver those services, you know, because if we bring things together, we can probably do them more efficiently, and if there's real demand for out-of-hours service, then that will be the way to do that, I think. I'm sure that, you know, that's got to be the right, to look at the whole way we deliver the service, since we're going to make a big investment in it, and improve it as much as we can.
But I understand that's kind of in the long-term aim. Is there anything you can do for this generation of students while they're at university? No.
Okay, well, I don't know what the detail of how strong the demand is for out-of-hours services. It's quite a detailed question, but again, that's something that I can look into. And if there's strong enough demand for it, do you know what the level of demand is?
Well, we've now got Tuesday evenings and counselling sessions, which have been, my understanding is that they've been full since that they've started it at the beginning of this year. And I know it's something that counselling services are going to continue, and thinking about extending to different evenings because of the demand for it. So I think that's right.
Well, if the demand is there, I'm sure that's what we'd be doing. But all.
Hi. Last term, at Student Senate, it was brought up and passed. So at some point it will come through to you via other channels. But whilst you're sat here, both asylum-seeking students, both asylum seekers and individuals with discretionary leave to remain have to pay international fees at Cardiff University, whilst at other universities, including Manchester University, Leeds, Royal Holloway, they either pay home tuition fees or no fees at all. What's your position? Will the university work with STAR, Cardiff's Student Action for Refugees group, to come to a decision about what we can do for Cardiff refugees?
Yeah, I'm very sympathetic to that. I think we should be, you know, if somebody comes here from, you know, in the moment it's Syria, it could be all sorts of places. I think we want to be we should be as helpful as we possibly can be, and including financially and in other ways, because I mean, we've got enough on the plate already. If they are actually genuinely refugees, which we can very easily establish, I think we should be being helpful and supportive, including financially in the way that you describe. As you say, other universities do it. Yeah.
And Helen put a paper together which yourself and Elizabeth Treasurer have already seen as well.
Yeah, no, it was an extremely good paper, actually, and it was very, I felt very persuasive and compelling, and I didn't have any hesitation at all in agreeing with that, as I've agreed with you now.
Now on camera.
Yeah, but, you know, I did say one thing behind closed doors and then another one publicly.
Okay. I just have one final question, which is what we've been asking all students throughout Speak Week. And it's a very simple question, you can answer whatever way you like, and that is, what does an outstanding university look like to you?
Oh, it's one where the top academics in the world want to come and work, where you get great students with fantastic potential from all areas of society, and it's one where you turn out kind of new discoveries and graduates shining like a new pin, where, you know, and where there's a real sense of people feel this is a great place that I really want to be, you know, and we'll go out and tell everyone what a great place it is, and be very supportive of the university, and, you know, where people are proud to be there. That's what a great university is.
Great. Well, let's thank the Vice Chancellor for giving up his time and answering our questions.